Right.
So 7:01, yikes, I'm a minute late. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So a few things. I wanted to turn back. I really enjoyed last week. We had a really great conversation, but I wanted to turn sort of back. We've been focusing on repertoire the past couple weeks, and I wanted to shift it back to the artists and to focus and to be more artist-centric and performance-centric, and really to just immerse ourselves in listening to music and assessing what we're listening to. And as I said in my email, I present a lot of things. I try in my programming to welcome at least a handful, sometimes less, sometimes more, of new artists who are making their debut on the series. And one of the most important things that I do is provide performance opportunities to artists and to artists who deserve to be heard. I cheekily refer to myself as a performance enabler. Sometimes.
Okay.
But it would be very easy for me to just keep presenting the same artists over and over again who are extraordinary world-class artists.
Mm-hmm.
But there's literally hundreds of artists and ensembles who maybe aren't your household name artists, but boy are they fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that we can familiarize ourselves with them is to make an investment in them.
Mm.
And these investments are sometimes tough. And I said in my email, it's my audience. I don't focus on audience. What I focus on audience and numbers. All I can do is present the best thing that I can, market it the best way I can. You can't, you can lead a horse to water,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole thing. So sometimes you got to take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope always in what I present in my brochure, in the season, in any given season, is that no matter who's playing the concert, when you walk through the door of our concert hall, you will be transformed, elevated.
Mm-hmm.
You might disagree with the artist they're playing. That's fine. But there's a certain level of artists and a quality of artists that I try to bring, no matter what their name is. And that's the most important thing that I do. And it's really the number one thing that I focus on in my programming.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, these lesser known artists, the hall's not full.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have the attitude, it's kind of, I was told not to put this in my email, but I'm like, that's tough luck. You missed it, which is not great, But I mean, some of these discoveries are really, for me, the most memorable concerts that we present. And it engenders a longer relationship over time with these artists and groups. So I wanted to just sort of do without comparing. I mean, this isn't about comparing, this is better than this is better, blah. I don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
What I want you to do, we're going to listen to, I'll divide it in two, to the quartets and pianists. And we're going to listen to each quartet, and I chose, and this is in one single season. I wanted to, for you guys, this is just your experience coming to a concert in a given season. I didn't cherry pick. These are all within one season, and I won't tell you what season that is.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose the quartets. Each quartet will play a work of Haydn or Mozart, and they will play I focused on the dance movement. We'll call it the dance movement of those quartets. And we'll listen to each one, and let's talk about the performance, what we liked, what we didn't like, all of that. And then at the end, I hate to do this, but let's rank them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that performances are a moment in time.
That's
This
right.
is not, this group is better than that group is better than this group. It's not about that. It's really not about that. But my goal is that I want you to hear quality over the course of a season, and we'll discover, hopefully, maybe some prejudgments that you might have might be dispelled. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
that's what we're doing. So we're going to be doing a lot of listening tonight. I wanted to get back into the music and stop this guy from talking so much.
But he's very good when he talks.
Yeah. But here we go. Let's listen to the first selection. Very short selection. We'll talk about these specific pieces and the artists afterwards, okay? But this is a Haydn quartet, the dance movement from a Haydn quartet. And here we go. Oh, nope. Hold on. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Hold on.
Nothing.
I know. I did it again. I'm sorry. Hold on. I have to click the share button. It's terrible. Here we go. Short and sweet. What do we think of that? That's
I don't know what it is, but it's very lively.
lively.
I wish I'd been at the,
Strong.
Sorry, Gary.
I wish I'd been at the concert.
Come to more concerts.
It was
Army.
really lovely. It was a very, very characteristic Haydn minuet or scherzo movement with a great trio. I think I know the quartet that played it, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
I think it's one of the Opus 20, right?
Oh, John, no, no, no.
No, it's not Opus 20. Okay.
It's one of those opus, one of those opuses.
One of those opuses. Okay.
I could have gotten that far.
So yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of Haydn. It's just so charming. It's so charming, so charming. And just really, you know, this was what, 2 minutes? 2 minutes long, about 3 minutes long, just
Mhm.
sheer, just charming. You just want to get out on the dance floor and do your thing, you know,
Mhm.
your three-step.
Yeah.
So it's funny that John's mentioned scherzo or minuet, and that's the challenge with this period, is that sometimes it's a scherzo, sometimes it is a minuet. The difference with a scherzo is,
So,
anyone?
Well, supposedly it's a joke.
Joe,
no, well, it's more
Yeah.
lively than a minuet.
scherzo is a joke. So this is actually a scherzo and not a minuet. Okay, here we go. That was round one. Are we ready for round two?
Okay.
Here we
Yes.
go. Piece number 2. Another charming one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was this written earlier than the first one in time?
No,
Well, no,
no.
sounds like it was from an earlier period.
What do we think about the performance?
Choppy.
Very crisp.
It gained in complexity over time. Interesting.
I'm sorry, it gained in complexity?
Yeah, it seemed like it was a much more, its interpretation was much more, it was stately and it was structured in the beginning, but it gained in complexity and in tones and so forth as it went along, in the way that I heard it.
Okay. I'll buy that.
What I enjoyed about the first one was, I guess I'm a sucker for kind of ensemble rubato, you know, how organically a group can kind of play around with tempo and yet keep the ensemble together. And I don't know, you know, sometimes that's written into the piece and the composer gives the performers more of that ability. So, you know, I don't know the piece, so it's not necessarily fair to do the comparison I'm about to, but this one was very straightforward and didn't vary, you know, the tempo. I didn't hear as much of a kind of a contrast between the middle section and the outer two sections. Again, you know, that could have been because the composer wrote it that way, but it all seemed very kind of uniform in its approach as compared to the first one where they really played around with those tempo in a way that made it really interesting for me.
I'll say, Brian, that in this period, the composer did not direct the musicians to do much. That it was all open for interpretation. I have the score. I'm going to pull up the score for this one anyway for different reasons. But but that's an interesting assessment. So it was more staid, you think? It was sort of
Right.
more linear.
Repetitive.
And I enjoyed both. It was just kind of
Sequence, more sequential.
kind of hearing the difference between the two.
Yeah.
A lot of sequence,
Sequence.
yeah, repetition of, in a different scale.
Correct.
Well, this piece is this is a sedate, well-behaved Haydn, which is pretty rare.
Perhaps, perhaps it's because it's not Haydn.
Oh, it's not Haydn. Okay.
It's a Mozart minuet trio.
This is Mozart.
Okay.
I said it was Mozart.
So you
This
did
is
it.
Mozart.
I said
What
Mozart.
else? So what about this? The work itself compared to the scherzo in the Haydn. What can you say that is different other than what you had described? It's a little more straightforward and.
A couple things stuck out to me. The silences in this piece. Every so often there were just everything came to a halt, and these pauses, I guess, is what you'd say. And then it sounded like a number of false endings. You kept thinking that it was going to end at one point, and then it would not quite get there. And so it was interesting in that way. I agree with what Brian said, though, in terms of maybe the music and maybe the performance. I thought the Haydn, for the reference to rubato, the fact that they were all working together so beautifully and they were willing to let the tempi be a little elastic. And here it felt a little bit more deliberate. It may be in the music and it may be in the performance. So for me, the two interesting things were the false endings and the silences, which seemed kind of fresh and unique.
Just to get back to the rubati, I don't think the first one did a lot of it. I think, but there was a lot more shape to what they were doing, perhaps. Not so much with tempo, my opinion. This one seemed to be a lot longer than the last one. Not only that it felt longer, perhaps, but it was a lot longer than the Haydn, right?
I think it's the repetition. This one had a lot of repetition.
And it speaks to what Sheila's saying about the repetition. And I'm going to pull up the score here. Uh-oh, hold on. There we go.
Doesn't.
I know, it's coming, it's coming. Here we go.
Okay.
Hallelujah. So this is a, straight up minuetto, and it's an A major. But he has these quotations of what Sheila was speaking to in the repetition. He's changing keys constantly. Look, it's all A major, and then he gets here, E minor, E major, E major, B major. It's extraordinarily, for Mozart's time, very, very chromatic. And then even when he comes before the double bar, goes into B minor. And then and has an F sharp major chord, which is the the dominant of B minor, and then goes through A dominant 7, E major. His keys are all over the place. It's extraordinarily chromatic for Mozart. Very, very chromatic. And if we scroll down a little bit more, just all you have to do is look at the accidentals and the use of accidentals. He's got the in bar 39, the G natural and things. It's very chromatic, and Mozart is playing with your ear. He's being, as Sheila had said, a bit redundant, but he's doing it and doing it in really interesting harmonies and harmonic structure throughout this little minuet movement. It's very, very unusual, and it's long for a minuet.
Yeah.
It's long. The tempo, I pulled it down. I think it's allegretto. Allegretto. And I think maybe perhaps this is no, it's not marked. I'm sorry. This is the Baron Reiter, and there's no tempo marking. It could be a little bit under in this performance. I don't know. Maybe leading it to be more, I heard, deliberate sounding, but the interest in this particular movement is the chromaticism that Mozart is using in constantly shifting keys within the piece. But it's also I would say twice as long as the last Haydn minuet. But anyway, an observation. So what we're coming through is that this one was a little bit more straightforward. This, it was a little bit more straight.
I see mechanical.
Mechanical, ouch.
You heard me.
I heard you.
Oh.
Not a good musical term, right?
But anyway, let's listen to the last selection, which is, well, I'm not going to tell you. It's another selection. And here we go. Charming. Haydn's the best.
Very playful.
Playful.
Yeah.
I think he said more in that. What is that? Is that 2 minutes? Not even 2 minutes?
Not even.
Just over 2.
Yeah, he said more in that 2 minutes than Mozart said in the 5 minutes or whatever of the previous piece.
Cool.
Uh-oh.
I hate to do comparisons, but
I hate to do
it is a
comparisons.
really charming, it's a lovely piece. It's really charming. It gets your toe tapping, which is what a dance movement should do.
This is true.
This one you really could dance to.
What about the performance?
Sounds like Schubert, but isn't.
That was good.
Good.
He had the shading. He had shading in it.
Yeah. Stylistic? I don't know. Everyone, it seems like we like this. It was kind of perky.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, that was a Haydn as I gave away. That was a Haydn scherzo. from the same set of quartets as the first one. So the first selection that we heard was Haydn's Quartet in G major, Opus 33, number 5. The second quartet was Mozart's Quartet in A major, 464, which is one of the Haydn quartets, his Haydn quartets. And the last selection was again from Opus 33. It's the B flat major quartet, Opus 33, number 4. So, okay. So we've got these 3 quartet performances. Which is the one that grabbed you the most?
Derek, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Both the Haydns were scherzos and the Mozart was a minuet. Does that make a big difference?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think the 2 performances I liked the best were the 2 Haydn. They had
Me too.
the warmest sounds. The Mozart to me was dry sounding. It was the driest
Okay, that's true.
sounding performance.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, sometimes it's just so subjective.
It is, yes.
That's the beauty of it.
It is. It is. I agree.
That
I
is,
agree.
there's no wrong answer.
No, and the quartet that performed the Mozart may have made a very they may have chosen to play it that
Absolutely.
way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's really our reaction to it is what
Yes.
we're going for. We can't
Yeah.
get ourselves involved in what they were trying to do. It's how
Yeah.
we're reacting to it as audience members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first one was most interesting. That one, I favored that one.
As a demonstration of subjectivity, I was most taken with the Mozart performance.
Mm,
Well, isn't that interesting?
there you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's okay. Sorry, David, go ahead.
I agree with the other David.
I like the Mozart too.
Same here.
They were together.
Okay, hands.
Go for the second hand.
Let's go for recording number 1. Who liked the recording number 1 the best?
I like recording number 1. I liked it.
No, recording number 2. And recording number 3.
I'd vote for that one.
So, seeing as though we have a lot of people without their video, so it's kind of hard.
Yep.
It seems like number 1 edged number 2, and I think number 3 had the least amount of votes.
Mhm.
Interesting. So the first performance was a performance from October of 2018 with the Belcher Quartet.
Oh.
That's the one you said.
Third performance, just to mix it up, is a recording of the Doric Quartet from February of 2019.
Yeah, very well known. Okay.
And the middle recording of the Mozart Quartet was the Emerson Quartet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Interesting. So different approaches to different music. But it was it's interesting that it was so close between one and the other. I expected a different result, but that's very, very interesting. What is it about the Mozart, just out of curiosity, like Charlie, what is it about the Mozart that you thought grabbed
They were
you?
together. They were.
It met my expectations. There were a few surprises. It started off and went through the entire repertoire in about the same manner.
Which I thought made it a little dry, you know, a little too, the word mechanical comes to mind again, a little bit too mechanical, which, and I usually love Mozart, so I don't know, but that particular piece. The third one was very, very playful, which is the word you use, and I like that much more. I like the way it jumped around a little bit.
The Doric is especially interesting in that they're very attuned to performance practice. When they perform Haydn and Mozart, they use Baroque bows with gut strings, and it has a very crystalline sound and
Very clear. Yeah.
very clear sound, and there's a wisp almost with their playing. It's a very distinctive sound in this repertoire. It's very interesting. Whereas the other groups are more modern. They don't really ascribe to that sort of specificity with performance practice. So very interesting. But again, all wonderful performances. All wonderful performances. It's funny this is an especially unusual. It's tricky because those Haydns are so ebullient and just charming and wonderful. And this Mozart's actually, like, for a dance, it's a little, it's a little funky. It's a little sort of staid, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Derek, what were you predicting? You said we kind of surprised you with our results.
What does that matter? No, I thought that one would stand out more than the other. Let's just put it that way. I thought that what I appreciate, I'll tell you where I'm coming from when I listen to these three recordings. I listen to character, shape of phrasing. I look for shape. I look for rising and falling. I look for these, clips of notes and like a very pronounced dance feeling. And I guess for me, I agree with others that the Mozart was a little staid. I thought it was a little one note, and lacked a little bit of shape, is what I would say. But again, it's subjective. I have a certain sound in my head when it comes to this repertoire, to Haydn and Mozart. It's a certain bell that needs to be rung, And when it doesn't get rung, I notice. And yeah, the Mozart didn't ring my bell. All apologies to, oh my God, who sang "Ring My Bell"? I can't remember.
Ring your bell.
Moving right along, we'll move to the pianists, and the composer is Schumann. Okay, and we're going to listen straight through. I chose two pianists playing two different Schumann works. And we'll go right through. Each is 3 movements. The first selection has an attacca, so it'll only sound like 2 movements. But let's hear that first performance of this particular Schumann piece. Oops, wrong.
Great pianist. Great pianist.
Anyone know the piece?
I don't know, something like Waldscheinen or something, I'm not sure. But it's like his collections of little vignettes like Kinderschenen and Carnival. It's so restless and beautiful, but I don't know the piece. It's fabulous though, whatever. What is it, Derek?
Anyone else? Let's see before I reveal. It's an early cycle, very close to Carnival. It's the Davidsbündler Tänze,
Oh, okay.
Opus 6. And it's the dance of the League of David. Does anybody know who the League of David was?
Davidsbündler, yeah.
It was, in Schumann's mind, the fighting of the Philistines against the music. This clash of the non-musical with the musical, and the constant fighting. And this is a piece that features prominently his two personalities, which were Florestan and Eusebius. What were the characteristics of each? What was Florestan representative of?
Well, I'll say that's because EU has to do with harmoniousness. So I'll say that the Florestan might have been the Philistines. Am I right?
Yeah.
Florestan is sort of the fiery and impetuous side of Schumann's personality, and Eusebius is a sort of dreamlike and introverted.
Spiritual.
Yes, spiritual.
Okay.
And when he published this piece originally, he ascribed each movement, the character that it represented, and then withdrew it in the later publication. So this, he wrote this very early on, and all these early works are about Clara. This is before he was married to Clara. Schumann taught Clara. Clara's father was a sort of imperious man, and he fell in love, and they had great problems getting together, Schumann and Clara, and there were lawsuits and everything. It was quite horrible. And there were times spent apart when they were young, when he was older. I forget how much older he was, but it was
about 11 years. 10.
I would say 10, 15 years. And during this time, he just had this outpouring of emotion for Clara. And that's reflective in these early works. They're fantastic. Schumann is often knocked that he couldn't think in larger scopes. Like his success was in the smaller, these little pieces. I would disagree. I love the symphonies. I think the Schumann Third Symphony, the Renner Symphony, is one of the all-time great symphonies, period. So what do we think of the performance?
Terrific.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought it was a
Love the
lovely
contrast.
performance that really captured Schumann really well. And to me, the one thing about performing Schumann is that everything is in the timing, because it's not like a long melodious line.
That's right.
It has to be done. The timing has to be absolutely perfect. Otherwise, it just totally falls apart. You could easily, that piece could turn to mush really easily in the wrong hands. And these were the right hands and left hands.
The correct hands. Yeah, I mean, and that's a great comment. The difficulty when you have these little movements is the shift. The performer has to shift on a dime and get the character immediately. After, this was, the first movement was about 2 minutes, and then bam, and the first movement was Florestan, and then it was back to Eusebius, and this particular movement harkens back to the second movement in the cycle, that beautiful melody, and the name of it is From the Distance, and it's sort of a reminiscence to what had happened earlier. It's fantastic.
I think it was a very charming piece. There was something about it that even his varying structures that he had through it, but there's a charm about it.
It's colorful and dramatic, sort of
Yes.
a lot of drama and emotion, and that I think also has to do with the timing. So it was very beautiful.
I think that's really, Schumann is, it's heart on sleeve. It's very impassioned when his music is as such. And when it's quiet and heartfelt, it's just so touching and moving. It's
That's it, touching.
yeah. It's he had fallen out of favor for a while. He's not easy, like a program of Schumann, it's not easy to listen to because there is this constant shifting that's happening all the time. You feel a little unsteady almost. I find it glorious. His music is so it's complicated and just emotionally and mentally complicated and challenging.
Well,
He was
complicated.
Well, yes. We'll get into that with the next piece. And yeah, so why don't we, okay, so we enjoyed that performance of Schumann, which I was not surprised at, Brian. Let's go to the last selection of the evening. And I won't say the piece, we'll try to name the piece. And again, in three movements. Here we go. Hmm.
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Wait, unmuted. Okay. There's
Beautiful.
still going on, I think, isn't it?
No.
No?
Any guesses on the piece?
It's one of his most famous pieces, and I've been going nuts trying to remember what it is. But it's so gorgeous. And that
You
was a
should.
wonderful performance.
You should. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll say why. Paul?
What I said before, Derek, really,
Waldseinen.
I thought from the first piece, then I said, right? It sounded like a little woodbird or something, but in any case, I wasn't sure.
This is a later piece by Schumann, Waldseinen. What's the opus number? 82. Written in 1848 to 49, forest scenes. And with a title like that, you would think these just beautiful little chirpy things, and kind of there's a darkness to this cycle that perhaps was not so reflected in the three selections that I chose. But the first one that John was alluding to, the famous one,
Yeah.
which is why John should know it. It's Vogel als Prophet. So the prophet bird.
Yeah.
John is a birder. Okay. And that's a very, very famous movement. And it's so interesting. It's so unusual and sparse. It's just these little bird calls, just, you know, it's like, it's very, very inventive for the time that this was written. The second piece was a hunting song, Jagdlied. It was very, very, very hunting. And the third movement is called Abschied, farewell. Very, very beautiful, charming closure to the cycle, actually. It's the last, those were the last three pieces of the cycle. So what did you think of the performance?
Very good.
No,
I thought it was a wonderful performance. I guess I like the combination of the music and the performance in the first one we heard. Yeah. So I'm a little more partial to the first experience of Schumann we had.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I agree with Paul's comments on both, because it's a beautiful performance, but I was more taken with the nuances and the overall beauty of that first performance. Was breathtaking. This was beautiful. The first was breathtaking.
I would say, sorry, go ahead, Nevia.
The first one was much more emotional and dramatic, and this one, you know, varied from the playful, the chirping, and then the second movement was kind of dramatic, in the sense that it was almost an emphatic retort to the first chirping part, and then the third part was melodic and sweet. You know, but the first Schumann that you played, the earlier one, was much more emotional all throughout, to me.
This was more thoughtful. The first and third movement were very thoughtful. And the middle one was sort of choppy, you know, with just complete contrast.
Yeah. Do you think, I'll just throw this out there, do you think the piece itself would affect the reaction that we're having?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Really.
So just to compare the works without a performer, you know, like I said, the Davisbündlertänze, I mean, it's at the height of his passion. He's a young man. He's, how old is he? He is 26 years old when he wrote the Davisbündlertänze. Full of passion. Oh, I'm in love. I want, you know, Clara is the one. Waldsehnen is written in 1848. So about 10 years later, Schumann had a depressive episode, a major depressive episode in 1833. And 5 years after this piece was written, he attempted suicide. He threw himself into the Rhine River and then committed himself to an asylum where he would die in 1856. So this, just on the standing alone, comparing the piece to the piece, these are two very different aesthetics that we're dealing with, two very different humans composing music, I would say. Schumann suffered from, there's different diagnoses, but certainly bipolar. There are those who think that it was brought on by syphilis. The Florestan Eusebius thing played into that, where these were could be voices in his head speaking to him. So he was a very, very talented man, very troubled, very, very troubled man. And I think the Waldsehnen is a much more mercurial piece than David's Tänze, for sure. Just comparing the works without any regard to performance. I think the comments that you had said about the performance were well suited, and I think that reflected the compositions. I think that's why both performances were very successful. I think you wouldn't attack Waldsehnen like you would David's Tänze as a pianist. You just wouldn't go at the keyboard in the same way at all, given the disparate qualities of these works. That being said, the performers. The first performance was a performance from December of 2018 by Jonathan Biss, who's dedicated a large part of his career to the works of Schumann. And he wrote when they were in vogue, he wrote a Kindle single about Schumann, which if you can get it, you should. Just go to Amazon and search for Jonathan Biss. He's a wonderful writer. And he's very, very much at home in Schumann's repertoire. The second performance was the debut of a young Hungarian pianist, Zoltán Fehérváry. Fehérváry. Zoltán Fehérváry. Zoltán I had heard at Marlborough, and interesting that I paired these two pianists. I heard a performance, I forget which piece. I want to say it was one of the Dvorak trios at Marlborough. And I had plans to meet Jonathan for a drink at his house after the concert. And we were talking about how I was so taken by Zoltán's playing that I wanted to do something for him. I really wanted to have this kid play on the series. And that's how it came to be. And I plugged him in, held the date, and then in the interim, he won this big competition in Montreal. And I actually recommended him to an artist management company, and they took him on. So I feel very good about this kid, and I want to help him out. But I think he's a wonderful pianist. He's a name you won't know, but he's a protege of Andras Schiff. He's a wonderful pianist. Wonderful pianist. So here we are at the end. So my point was that, I don't know if I had a point. I wanted to do a lot of listening. I was talking too much these past couple weeks. I wanted to listen to some music, but I wanted to show you that, whoever's coming onto the series has some validity. And there's a lot of vetting. There's a lot of vetting that I do before I even consider an artist. And I don't listen to a lot of CDs. I don't. My CD collection is spare, actually. It will be an entry point for me when I'm looking for an artist. but I always go and hear them. I always want to sit in the room with an artist and hear how I feel in the room. And if there's a sort of magnetism, certain sparkle. And that's not to say that everyone will feel that, but it's what I feel. And I try to bring, when I incorporate new musicians into the series and then develop relationships on an ongoing basis with these musicians, it's those musicians who have touched me and who I feel have a voice that should be heard. And it's very important to me. That aspect of my job about providing opportunities to artists, I take very, very seriously. And so I don't sort of just throw things together willy-nilly and you know, listen to some recording, say, oh, I like him, let's put him on the series. There's a lot that goes into it. Some artists, you know, Zoltan took me 3 years to get onto the series. 2-3 years. It takes time to figure everything out. It's a puzzle. But, you know, and the Doric is getting back to the quartets. The Doric Quartet had no career in the States. I booked them 15, 16. And it was because I had someone drop out at the last minute and I went, ah! And I knew that they had brought on a violist that I heard at Marlborough, newer to the quartet. And I listened to them and I said, okay, let's do them. And the Dorics will be at our series pretty regularly.
Wow.
After that first choice, they played our first concert when we dipped our toe into Albany in February. They played a concert, but I find them to be, they're young. I mean, they're 40, upper 30s, 40 years old, but they're fantastic. And now they're playing in Carnegie Hall and Weill Hall. They're touring all over the States. You know, to get these artists at their beginnings and then to develop relationships, my relationship with them, and then our audience's relationship with them is very, very important. And it's really imperative for the future of classical music, because these young people, they keep coming. They keep coming. So for me to present, you know, the same group, you know, the same old group that has been around for 30, 40 years, you know, all the time, you know, it's important for the series to develop relationships with these young artists, and it's important for them to perform with us. It helps their careers. Just like Zoltan, it helped his career that I brought him here. And that makes me, I mean, it's wonderful. It's, you know, that's another aspect of my job that's fantastic.
We're the beneficiaries of that, Derek, which I very much appreciate. I mean, that process that you go through, we are the beneficiaries. Can I just ask a minor question? The K464 that you played,
yes,
from Emerson, I'm assuming that was a recording from the David Finkel time, before the Paul Watkins time. Am I right?
No, this was all from the 18-19 season.
So it was already Paul Watkins?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I purposefully I didn't want to cherry pick performances. I wanted to focus on a single season to be representative of my program. That was the goal. I didn't want to cherry pick the performances. And then I tried to match the repertoire so that there could be some basis of comparison. That was really the goal. But yeah, I mean, there's always give artists a chance. That's really the point. I mean, you know, all I can do is do my very best and bring it to you, but you got to come. You know, and unfortunately, people have very busy schedules. They say, oh, well, I don't know. Well, am I going to go? But I tell you, when I present these unknown people, and then that next week, audience members coming up to me left and right, like, wow, you know, that was fantastic. You discover these people. You know, and the series has a really great history of introducing our audiences to the future stars of tomorrow. I mean, Long played on the series when he was like 19, and he was nobody. Yeah. 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 And so you just, there's always, if you start at a certain level, I will never cheat you. I will never sell you a bill of goods. All I can do is, bring to you what I feel is meaningful to you. And you'll disagree with me for sure. I mean, I'm not the be all end all of classical music, but give it a try, and maybe I'll convince you if you disagree. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But young artists need a chance. Young artists need an audience. And I will always be presenting young artists and debuts on the series. It's so important to give them opportunities, and so important for them to have a full hall to play for. I always speak of the symbiotic relationship that happens at our concerts. It's a very intimate experience. We're all in the performance together, and they sense it. Believe me, the artists sense, they know, they sense, they always comment to me on how in tune the audience is with them. So it's I don't take that for granted, and I would never put anything on the stage that wouldn't be up to it. So there you go. There's your lecture. There's been some movement on my little radio show. Unbeknownst to me, that they love what I did, which is fantastic. But then they're like, well, we want to have 3 or 4 in the can before we do it. So the premiere of the radio show will be on June 13th, Monday, June 13th.
No, wait.
June 13th?
Sorry, did I say June? July. They wrote June 13th in the email, so I'm sorry, it's July 13th, Monday night, July 13th.
Okay.
I cleverly put it at 6 o'clock, and then every week I will come on at 7 o'clock and discuss the show with you.
That's it.
Excellent.
Dovetail everything.
Also, and discuss, answer questions, again, this is a two-way street. Some of them will contain interviews with artists, and I will try to share, if it's appropriate, segments of the interviews that don't appear on the radio within the Zoom group. The first show, I interviewed the cellist of the Doric Quartet. We had an hour-and-a-half conversation of all sorts of things, and the interview was maybe 10 minutes. So that's the idea. So it will be a weekly show on Monday evenings at 6 p.m. on WMHT, and then we'll come on to Zoom and talk about it afterwards. I prefer as little thinking as possible in planning things.
So in essence, if I understand correctly, Derek, you're replacing what you're doing now with that new format, or adding to it?
Adding to it.
Yeah.
Because we'll still be getting together.
Yeah.
And forgive me if some of the shows are regurgitations. But no, but they've been fun to put together. 2 of them are in the can. The third one will be in the can on Wednesday. So yeah, so they'll be interesting. I hope you enjoy them.
And this is weekly with an indefinite future?
This is weekly until I drop dead. Yes.
Yeah, really. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, it will be weekly. It will be weekly.
6 o'clock on Mondays.
6 o'clock on Mondays. We'll start, we just decided this. I told Rob Brown, I wanted to get a date in the book so I can tell you guys. It'll be promoted heavily, I think, in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll go from there.
So the 6 o'clock you record.
Write it down on the calendar.
Sorry, David, what's the question?
And so you're recording the 6 o'clock. You're saying they're in the can. They're recorded for.
They're 1-hour programs that will be aired on WMHT.
Yeah, but are you doing them at 6 o'clock live, or they're recorded before?
No, I'm not insane. No. No, they're all pre-recorded. They're all pre-recorded. All pre-recorded. And then at 7 o'clock we'll get together and talk about them.
Good.
Yeah. And I hope you enjoy them. I hope they've been, they'll be interesting to you. So.
And
There we go.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
Very
Okay.
enjoyable.
Hi, Francine.
Thanks so much. Say hi to your friends. Yes. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
Hi.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Derek.
night, Derek.
Good night.
Night.
Leave meeting.